All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the July 23rd, 2025 iteration of the Hyperlight Fortnightly community meeting. These meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So if you just don't want to be on the recordings or anything, feel free to keep your camera off and just talk in the chat if you want to. These meetings are subject to the CNCF Code of Conduct. There's a link to that in the notes above. So be sure to read that if you're interested. All right, let's get started. I think we have kind of a light agenda today. Are there any Oh yeah, and everybody who's here, please add yourself to the attendees list so we can keep track of who's attending the meetings and um, see how the community is progressing. Does anybody have any announcements? I think before we started the recording, we were just discussing we do have another release planned for next week. So probably the following community meeting, we will cover what actually made it into that release and share some release highlights. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to announce? Nope, doesn't sound like it. All right, I think we can get into the discussion items. Uh, Ludwig, I see you added the future of dirty page tracking. Do you want to
Yeah,
elaborate?
thank you. So basically, last 2, 3 weeks, I've been working on dirty page tracking, taking over the work after Simon. And there's some clear performance benefits when restoring from snapshots that are big, because with these changes, you don't need to restore all memory, only pages that have been dirty. So the bigger the sandbox, the greater the performance benefits. It's also much faster to take a snapshot of large sandboxes when not many pages have been dirtied. But there's also some performance regressions uh, caused by, I think, all the page faults. So if you restore memory and then execute a guest function, there's a performance regression in tracking all dirty pages. So I would just like to discuss like if the performance benefits are worth it or not, and whether or not we want to merge this.
Do we have some um, maybe some like concrete numbers or examples? I think
Yeah, I
a
can.
little bit hard to discuss just by saying there may be some regressions and may not be.
Okay, I have some here right in front of me. So to take a snapshot of a sandbox with that's 50 megabytes big, the time has improved by 99.7%. So that's a pretty big performance improvement. And that's of course when not many pages have been dirtied. Um, to restore a snapshot of a sandbox that's 500 megabyte has improved by 99% as well. That's of course also when not many pages have been dirtied. So I'm not sure it's totally a realistic scenario. But so in some regressions are in a trivial guest call after a restore, the performance has regressed by 86%. So I think that's because of just the overhead of tracking dirty pages.
Yeah.
Restoring a sandbox with default size. So I don't know if this is relevant or not, but we have a benchmark for this. Is also slower now because probably just mem copying the entire memory is faster than doing this extra logic we added on. So there's like a benefit. The sandbox has to be a minimum size for the benefit to show up. Um, taking,
Ludwig,
yeah, sorry,
sorry,
go ahead.
yeah, that's a good question. You said this is across all backends, or is this specific for KVM, or?
It's across all of them,
Oh,
but
okay.
MSHP is even a little bit slower
Hmm.
as well. Yeah, I'll just mention a last benchmark. So it's a little
Yeah.
bit slower as well to create a sandbox, especially on MSHV because we need to clear all the dirty pages because differently from KVM, they're initialized to be dirty. But yeah, maybe James, do you have any ideas?
You said in the scenario where there was speed up, that it was a specific, like it was when pages weren't being dirtied. So
Hmm.
is there, um, does that speed up still hold true if the pages get dirtied, which probably is a pretty realistic scenario?
Yeah, I haven't tested it other than with like trivial guest functions that just dirted like a tiny amount of a heap, basically. So I'm not sure on that one.
Right.
Right?
Okay. You're muted.
Yeah. Um, so some of the regression is due to tracking the dirty pages. So
Hmm.
I already brought this up with Ludwig, but I think it's interesting to bring it up here. So if we are mainly interested in the benefits being during restoring a sandbox, and we are happy paying the cost during taking a snapshot, uh, maybe we can come up with a solution where we don't track the dirty pages, but when we take a snapshot, we compare with the what the memory should have been, and then we detect the dirty pages there. Basically, we do time compare of the page, and if there's a change, then that's a dirty page. It would require having a virgin copy of the memory somewhere. That I'm not sure that's the case at the moment.
I think, I mean, the other thing is that I think the performance benefit from this that we might have is on restore as well, right? Where if we can do less work on restores to something like another branch of the same snapshot tree, that's one of the main benefits that you'd hope to get from this. And that I think goes away if you do that. But maybe that benefit isn't really there because of all of this extra tracking overhead. So one of the other questions I had was, is that benefit there? And if it's not, another thing you could do is just disable dirty, like sort of have a flag to enable dirty page tracking when you intend to take another snapshot and disable it when you intend to throw away the sandbox after this use. So is that something you look at all?
Yeah, I was also thinking about something like that. I think it does make sense to enable the user to turn it off, let's say if they don't need it anymore. Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna ask how much overhead it would be to keep the code in there and have it be like exactly that, have the users decide to do that. I don't know if we have enough data right now to know if it's going to be like how useful it's going to be. Go ahead, James. Yeah, I think along the same lines, I was wondering, can we figure out if the usage patterns for the customers that we do have, if this helps those particular usage patterns, and that might give us some insight into the benefits of this or the disadvantages of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think the the guest data copy on write stuff that I'm doing also is sort of as part of it ends up doing most of the same stuff as this does, but in a very different way that may or may not be better. So what I would say is we should see if this has a positive or negative performance impact on the customer use cases that we know we actually have, and then we can merge it right away if not, and if it does, and if it has a negative impact on those use cases, then maybe we leave it out of free, we compare it with the thing I'm working on, and we see if there's optimizations we can do to bring one of the approaches into the clear lead.
yeah, that sounds good to me.
I guess another question is, how are we going to determine that? Are we going to keep it on? And I'm just a little bit wary of adding another kind of modifier to our CI testing matrix, if we could do that outside of the normal CI jobs to get that answer, that would be, I think, my preference.
Yeah, well, I think probably what we want to do right now for that is that Ludwig also has put together that other benchmark that does HTTP load testing. So you probably want to evaluate this on that, and you might want to look around a little bit at sort of how it does the sandbox snapshot and restore in that benchmark and see if you can make sure that's A, realistic, and B, see if there's a way you can change it to make the change work better. So I think, so everything for taking measurements should just be in that repo, I think, and then we can look at the numbers on that graph. That's what I would prefer, at least.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I think that sounds good. I'll do that. And then I'll report back. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Next agenda item, Jorge, is that the breaking changes in the pipeline?
Yeah. So at the moment, there are some breaking changes in the master branch of the repo, and there's also some breaking changes coming. There's some different levels of breaking changes. We removed everything that was related to evolving and devolving the sandbox. The uninitialized sandbox now has a method called evolve that doesn't take any arguments. But the traits and all of that is not there anymore. And the plan is to rename that evolve method to something like init or initialize. Also, the implication of not having evolving and devolving sandbox, the motivation for that was that we're adding a snapshotting and restoring method to a sandbox. So you can take a snapshot not only during evolving or devolving operation, but at any point in time. A consequence of that was that before, when we were calling a guest function, at the end of that guest function execution, we were automatically restoring the sandbox. So we are not doing that anymore at the moment. The plan is to keep the current method name, which is called guest function by name, by doing a snapshotting and restoring and keep that old behavior, but adding a new method that would be the more fundamental method that would basically mutate the state of the sandbox without restoring. And then if you want the old mechanism, you can do a snapshot and then restoring manually. But the plan is to avoid pain when backwards compatibility, is to keep the old method maybe hidden or something like that, and having the same mechanism. Yes, Lucy.
I've said this before, but I think that probably using that method is going to be an anti-pattern in general, because it creates a snapshot that you probably don't actually want to create in a hidden way where you can't persist it, and most snapshots you create you probably want to persist. So I would actually be super in favor of just removing or putting a deprecation tag either putting a deprecation tag on or ideally removing the old method to force people to really think about, is that what they intend to do, rather than just create, not notice the change and find out that the performance is worse and continues to get worse, because that's not a use case that we optimize. So I would really like to make sure that the API reflects the things we actually want, the usage patterns that we expect people to use, and the way that we want them to use the software, and the way we measure the software, and not kind of make it really easy to shoot yourself in the foot by not updating your software.
Yeah, I know that, for instance, Simon probably has some opinions on that. Unfortunately, he's not here. But we do have some consumers that we believe are relying on that functionality. So either we have to communicate properly with them, or
yeah, I think it would be better to give them a heads up and say the API is fundamentally changing in this way, and we want to re-architect your software to deal with it. So basically, I don't like the idea that silently software gets slow and continues to get slower, because the way they were using the API is still there, but no longer a thing that we care about optimizing.
So I don't think that necessarily has to get slower. We can stored snapshot like we are doing at the moment. When we evolve the initialized sandbox, we can store it there. Like basically we take a snapshot, and that would make things slower for the, like, it's something that we don't necessarily have to do, but if we want to preserve the current behavior, it would be good to do it so that it doesn't become too, like, that we don't impact performance as much.
Well, but like as we continue to evolve the snapshotting and restoring process, right? Like in general, we are moving towards changes that make taking a snapshot heavier in favor of making restoring a snapshot lighter, because we think the really common use case for our users is restore a snapshot, run a function, throw the sandbox away, and restore a new snapshot, right? All of the work that I'm doing right now is based on that as well. And so we're going to, as we assess work in the future and decide what emerge, our assessment of performance implications is going to be based on those use patterns and on assumptions that you're not taking snapshots all the time. And I think it's really good for us to have that, because I don't think we should turn up ways to make restoring and like the actual common case of restore and execute and throw away faster. But at the same time, that means that we're likely to regress performance on this over time, even if we don't have it right now. And I would like to just not have us be constrained by needing to worry about
that. Yeah, James.
Yeah, so I think my major concern was just not leaving the API with no indication to our users who are currently using that API that the behavior changed in a pretty dramatic way. And I think, Lucy, what I'm hearing and what I think you said in the issue is either put a depreciation tag on it so that folks know that this has happened, or remove it completely. I think that's what I heard. It's not just like reuse. I think reusing the same named function would be a bad idea. I think that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, so I think at this point where no one is considering keeping the thing we have right now where the function has the same name but changes behavior. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jorge, but I think we agreed on not doing that.
Yeah,
so the question here is just, do we add a new function but leave the old function there completely as it is right now? Do we add a new function and leave the old function there with a deprecation tag, or do we add a new function and remove the old function entirely? And I think Jorge was in favor of leaving the old function as supported API, and I'm in favor of removing it. So that's where most of this debate is, I think. And we can continue to have this conversation offline, but it seems worth bringing up in this meeting in case any users have strong opinions about this actually is the pattern that they want to be using or anything like that. But...
I'll just come in here. Mine is slightly unrelated, but still related. Jorge, you mentioned removing, or at least modifying the evolve, right, and removing some of the logic, even the transitions. That is something that I've been utilizing currently in some of the work with Nanvix. In particular, I added a new transition, which allows you to build the host and guest memories beforehand. So you know that we have exclusive shared memory. You do build, you get host and guest, and that currently happens inside of evolve. Added a transition so that you can do that beforehand. Grab a handle to the host shared memory, and then proceed with normal initialization. With transitions being gone, that will no longer be supported. And I was planning on putting a PR for this to sort of discuss and see if maybe there's a better way to have that API. So maybe I thought this, considering we're talking about removing those things, this would be a good place for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you explain again what the benefit, like why you want this? Because I think anything you can do at the host shared memory, you can also do at the exclusive shared memory. So what's the benefit of giving up the guest half of it before you have to when the guest actually starts?
So the idea there was, well, you grab the as is, you grab the host shared memory so that you can have access to the write methods, because the exclusive shared memory is consumed after you build, right? So with the host, as it's running in the sandbox, you would have that host shared memory reference so that you can act on it.
Let's follow up offline and see if that I don't quite understand. I don't want to take the rest of this meeting asking you about
Okay.
it, so that's what I'm flying.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
sure.
thank you for flagging that, Dan. We should see the use case and see if that's the best pattern that we want to use.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
cool.
Thank you.
I'll bring up a chat in Slack or something like that.
Yeah, I think next is the blockers for release. Or hey, do you want to take that too?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few things we want to fix before we release that currently they are there, but we're not happy with their current state. I think that there's a plan to have a tag to tag an issue as a blocker for a release, so that to make sure that we don't release as long as we have one of those open.
Mhm.
One of them that comes to my mind is the memory mapping API that we currently have that is kind of like has a lot of assumptions about the memory, and you have to use raw pointers and things like that. So I think that we want to work on that. I think that James was putting something together, but I'm not sure. The other one is that snapshotting doesn't play very nicely with memory mapping at the moment. And also like the lifetimes are a bit all over the places when you include memory mapping. The last one is the discussion that we were having with call guest function by name, that currently it has changed the behavior, but we want to do something, either remove it or keep the old behavior but with a deprecation warning, or all the options that we're talking here. I think that we don't want to do the release until we fix those.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And big plus one for the blocker tags for me.
Jorge, I guess on that topic, so I had started kind of doing a little bit mmap stuff, and you'd mentioned you were doing like an internal API with the snapshotting for mmap.
Yes, and
And so I kind of put it on hold to see what that internal API looked like so I could maybe potentially reuse it. So
perfect. Yeah, and I promised you I was going to open a PR, and I didn't.
okay, okay. No worries. I think, yeah, just make sure we're coordinated there.
So is the problem with the snapshotting with mmap, the third bullet, that restoring a snapshot unmaps the previously mapped mmap regions? Is that the issue right now?
Using the vocabulary from your 30-page tracking PR, if you go backwards, that's okay because you're unmapping memory regions. But if you want to move forward, we are never remapping anything because we don't know what
Oh,
we need to remap.
I see, I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I got it. Uh, Maybe for if we like one temporary solution could just be not allow going forward at this time.
Yes, that would be a solution. Although detecting if something is going backwards or forward depends on your PR. Like the mechanism to do that is on your PR, but otherwise, we would need to cherry pick that behavior from your PR.
Yes. So since we don't currently allow going forward anyway yet, right? I think it would be fine not to allow it in the next release too. Wait,
Uh,
in
well,
0.7, I mean.
yeah, 0.7 doesn't allow going forward. So I think that's an okay compromise.
Okay. Yeah, so if mine doesn't get merged, I'm happy to take that one. Um, but if mine gets merged, I guess we'll get both for the cost of one.
Yeah, I do hope your customers. I liked it.
Me too, me too.
All right, I think that's the end of the agenda. We've got 9 minutes left before our Zoom account is going to close the meeting. Do we want to spend a little bit of time going over some new issues, doing some backlog grooming? Yeah. I think, Dan, you usually do that. Do you want to take over now, or do you want me to try and do that?
Yeah, I can do it if you like to. Feel free, Mark.
Oh no, you can do that.
Okay. All right, so I'll share my screen. Okay, you should hopefully be seeing my browser with issues open.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so as usual, what we do with the backlog and milestone is we look at issues that have needs review. We're using currently the needs review label as a marker that is something that we should take a look and discuss in these meetings. And then we'll go to the milestone to maybe remove items, add, and so forth. So needs review. We have 3 this week. The first one is from you, Jorge. Call clear IO buffers only on error conditions. Anything you wanted to discuss on this one?
Yes, from the snapshotting API, one of the consequences was that we are now not restoring the state of the. We are not restoring the snapshot after the guest call. So that's fine if during normal workflows, but under certain conditions, like for instance a memory access violation or an abort or something like that, then we don't exit the sandbox cleanly. And from the test that I was running, I get the impression that the IO buffer was not being properly cleaned. So I introduced a function to clear the IO buffer, and we're always calling that. And that stops re-entrant functions. So we cannot call a guest function when we are handling a host function we cannot call a guest function when we are handling a host function from a previous guest function. So when there's already a guest function running. So something we may want to do is just call the clear IO buffers only when an error happens. Although I think that what I would prefer to do is figuring out which is the state of the sandbox that we are leaving dirty and fixing that instead and getting rid of clear IO buffers completely. But I think until that's higher effort. So I think until then, only calling clear IO buffers in error conditions is better.
Okay. Right, that makes sense. I think UIC, you've already assigned yourself, so I'll mark this as a confirmed item. I'll remove the needs review. I'm guessing this is not something for 08, but is this something you're planning to look for 09 or?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a blocker, and I think the other things are higher priority, so we can leave it for later.
Cool. I'll leave it in 09 for now then.
Was this a change in behavior though? I'm not sure if it's a big one, but
What was that, James?
is this a change? Like, did this change so you can't do the re-entry?
I'm not sure that it's currently possible to re-enter.
Okay.
I think it was technically possible before, but we've never tested it, never thought it was possible, and I don't know of anyone using it.
Okay.
But,
That's good enough.
to re-enter from the host function handler, you have to get a reference to the sandbox that you can call, and I think even more you need a mutable reference to the sandbox. So I'm not sure you can get that, but I don't know if you have some tricky things with mutexes or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. Actually, the current API might not make it easy without doing some unsafe nonsense anyway.
Okay, with that one done, we have another one from you, Jorge. This one is restoring snapshots does not play nicely with memory mapping.
Yeah, sorry. This is the one we discussed during
Yes,
the
yeah.
meeting.
Okay. Just confirm it. Where do we want to assign this one for the milestone? Right.
That's for 08.
Oh wait, yeah. One of the blockers. Okay, and finally, the last one is from Ludwig. Restructure micro benchmarks.
Yeah, I just think Simon posted this on my PR. I just put it here to remember. I think we could just reorganize them a little bit, but nothing urgent.
Okay. Do you want to put it in the backlog or upcoming or?
Uh, Put it in the backlog for now, I would say. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Cool. All right, I think we are done with needs review. I'll just check if we have any with no milestone currently. We do. We have two. Um, One is from Lucy, improve guest TLB invalidation. Lucy?
Oh yeah, so this was previously masked by the fact that all of our guest page tables looked basically the same because they were all just identity mappings. Um, but when we save and restore sandboxes and do various things from the host that change the layout of memory in the guest and the page tables in the guest, we didn't used to have any way of doing a TLB invalidation. In my memory mapping PR, which is the first one that adds some amount of page table manipulation that's different between sandboxes before and after restores, I added a thing where the code in the sandbox entry function always runs a TLB invalidation, which is both slow and a little bit difficult to guarantee will always work, especially in the future when the code pages themselves might not always be mapped the exact same way in between sandboxes. So what we really want is a way for the host to say, hey, I've changed the page tables in this sandbox. This sandbox needs to have its TLB flushed. Unfortunately, it's not immediately obvious that there are good APIs for doing this across all the hypervisors, even when the functionality exists in hardware. Um, so we might need to investigate things like trying to bump the ACID every time that we do a restore into a sandbox or something. But that would be really irritating because it would require actually changing the page tables on the restore, and so it would rule out a bunch of the options for really fast restore. So maybe there's another option where you have a one little page table that has a changed ACID that you use just to jump into a special piece of code that you use to actually invalidate the TLBs or something like that. I can think of a few solutions here. They're all kind of awkward. Ideally, we would just have an API from the hypervisor to say, hey, please set the host mucked around and needs the guest TLB invalidated bit when you enter the VM, which exists on SVM, not sure about VMX. This is a pretty this is a real bug. It's mostly masked and compensated by the thing that we have right now. I would like to deal with it sometime relatively soon. It will probably get worse with the changes I am making right now. I thought everyone should be aware of it. For milestone, I guess probably 09.
Okay, makes sense. I'll put it in 09. And we can always discuss again when we go over 09, probably next week or the coming week after that. Cool. If there's no more comments here, the last one we have is from
We've
Doru.
got 2 minutes left too, just a time check.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Not sure if Doru's in here. Do
Yeah.
we have any idea?
This is just essentially taking some of the work that he did and moving it into like doing a little bit of cleanup as well as I think there's probably one in here for bringing it towards like integrating it with some of the other tracing work that we have so that it would then end up in like an open tracing output. So
Where do you want to place it, James?
yeah, it's probably upcoming or 9.0, yeah.
Yeah. I'll put it in. I'll put it in 09 for now, and we can revisit the coming week. All right, Mark, you said we had 2 minutes left. I don't know if we have time to go over
Less than a minute now.
less than a minute. All right, so maybe we'll conclude there. Okay, cut off.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, yeah, thanks all. Hope to see you folks again in 2 weeks. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Bye bye.
Bye.